Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, malcontents. You know what? We have a little problem. I have everything set up but one thing. Hey, there you go. Now you can see me. I'm not in the dark. It would help if I turned the studio lights on. Hey there, malcontents. Good evening. I am the malcontent. Today is Thursday, October 7, 2021. How the heck is everybody doing? Oh, my goodness. Always great. We haven't started off a show with technical difficulties in a really long time. We got a lot to cover. I'm so busy in real work. Oh, my God. And with that, we're just going to want to go, oh, Shelly, I don't know how to take that. The dark was Halloween spooky. I have a sarcastic, I desperately want to put up this sarcastic dark tweet on our Twitter page, but I'm using restraint. Let's see. We got some new names in there. I always like seeing new names in the chat. I think that Twitter deprecated everything about Periscope. So even though we've been broadcasting on Periscope, Twitter for months, it's still been using the Periscope API. Don't worry what an API is. Twitter, the Periscope API, and now they were like, yeah, but you can do it through Twitter. It's all good. And their API is just a hot mess. And there's just constant TSBs, bulletins from Restream on, we're really sorry, but this doesn't work. We're really sorry, but that doesn't work. And if you're watching us on Twitter, unfortunately, I can't see your comments. When I look down here, I only see 3 of 3 channels connected. So, and the other thing is, maybe Twitter is connected because Twitch got hacked and Twitch has its own little hot mess. And I had to change some settings right before we got onto airtime because of Twitch. And that's actually why the studio lights were on. So with all of that said, and for all 20 people that are watching, getting hard to do the happy hours, y'all. Let's go ahead and do into it. It's not productive to yell at your watchers when the issue is with the non-watchers. Good news, everyone. The hospital new case rate for the state of Washington has dropped below 400 for the first time since August 17th. And I didn't have to look anything up to know that, because August 17th was the day when I made the decision of like, all right, we're going back to daily COVID coverage because damn. And the case rate was 396 and change on August 17. Today we're at 398, which is still a hot mess. There is a huge gap between Eastern Washington and, or I shouldn't say Eastern Washington, although there is a huge gap between Eastern Washington, but there is a huge gap between, I'm going to go ahead and full screen this. And then can I make that part? Yeah, it's fine. You get to see that part. There is a huge gap between the least vaccinated counties and the most vaccinated counties. And I want to go ahead and pull this up here onto the screen so you all can see this. There we go. We'll add myself to the view. I know some of you that are probably on phones are like, yeah, that's great. I can't read this stuff here. We'll go ahead, and that's probably about as big as I can make it. There are 4 counties in the state of Washington that are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, total population. So that includes people from birth to 11 years old that can't get vaccinated. There are 4 counties that are over 60%, 1 county that's over 70%. Those 4 counties have a population unadjusted positive 14-day rolling average positivity rate of 205.3, which still isn't good, but it is almost half the state rate. There are 8 counties that have a vaccination rate below 40%. The basement is Stevens County at 29.3%. Their case rate is 739.7. And it went up from yesterday. And again, that is not population adjusted. So you're looking at a case rate that is more than triple in the least populated counties, in the least vaccinated counties, I should say, not populated, although they are low population, in the least vaccinated counties versus the most vaccinated counties. All of the most vaccinated counties are in Western Washington. There it is San Juan, Jefferson, and King in that order, with San Juan County at well over 70% fully vaccinated. You look at these numbers here, it's like, geez, I don't know. What's making that work? Man, why is it so much lower in the most vaccinated counties? What could possibly be the contributing factor here? And I know that some people will go, well, yes, but San Juan is a very limited population county and people are very isolated there because of the islands, and that's why it's much lower. What? And Stevens County and Ferry County aren't sparsely populated with a distributed population that have limited number of stores and limited number of places where people go and congregate and to do things like buy groceries and get gasoline? Spare me. Spare me on that argument. It's like vaccinations work or something. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. All right, we'll flip back over here to me. And no, I don't want to do that. Got to switch the focus over here. Let me pull this over here. You're killing me, Smalls. There we go. Do we already have to wield the band hammer? Wow, that quick. Wow. They're getting angry and desperate because their numbers are shrinking for more reasons than one. We had 2 days in the last 5 days where we didn't have a single county with a case rate over 1,000. 2 in the last 5 days. And we actually were like, hey, we're going to take it off. We're not going to track it anymore. And then Ferry County has to go and screw it up for everybody. And Ferry County is up to 1,137 per 100,000, which is approaching the peak that they had in April, when they actually shut the county down after the super spreader event in Republic, where everybody was pissed off and like 10% more people got vaccinated. God, sometimes I hate it here. I really do. If we talk about the other situations going, 7-day case rate by age was largely unchanged from yesterday. It is all when I don't want people to look on the website and go, you said it's statistically unchanged. So then how did the number of case rates go down? Statistically unchanged means it may have gone up a little bit or it may have gone down a little bit, but it didn't go up or down so much that we're like, okay, we're going to flag it. Like, hey, this went down or this went up. It just means it was moving in a small range. And so across all age groups, everything went down a little bit. And the case rate across the state went down a little bit. Hospitalizations are mixed. They're all over the place. Birth to 11, pediatric hospitalizations went down. So did people 20 to 34. Age 50 to 64, hospitalizations went up. For ages 65 to 79, hospitalizations went down. For age 80 and over, the hospitalizations went up. So it's kind of all over the board. None of the age groups, none of the counties are at a normal level. San Juan County, the most vaccinated county in the state, got to a 7-day new case rate below 25, which then means we're good. That's where it should be. They were there for 2 days. It's bounced up back to around 40, which isn't terrible in the big scheme of things, but it just means that, like, we're not where we want to be. 57 deaths yesterday in the state of Washington, according to the U.S. State COVID Tracker. UW-Medicine has now made it an official policy. If you want to get a solid organ transplant, you're going to have to get the COVID-19 vaccination. Now, Jason Rantz, who came at me on Twitter earlier this week. If you want to go to our Twitter channel, you can see where Jason Rantz came at me, and then I called him out for lying with a quote from his own words, and he did what every good Trump troll does in these situations. He went to the ad hominem when he was presented with, here are your words from September 6th, when you actually said this, Jason. You should just stick to being liberal and Antifa protests. Bite me. From one Jew to another. Bite me. Jesus. Steve, Furry County. In Furry County... Y'all stay away from that rabbit furry there because he's hardcore, okay? You new to this whole furry scene. I suggest you go with the fox or the panda bear because they're going to go easy on you. Let's talk about this, because UW is not the only facility that has said no COVID transplant. No COVID vaccine, no transplant. So why are they doing this? In order to get an organ transplant, you have to go on immunosuppressants, because if you don't, your body's going to go, stranger danger, and it's going to reject the organ, and you're going to get yeeted. You're going to die. So you have to take these immunosuppressant drugs, and you'll have to take them for the rest of your life. Now, these drugs have gotten a lot better. 20 years ago, these drugs were hardcore. Like, you're going to get a cold. You really had to be careful. And they made you really, they made you feel like shit, and they've gotten a lot better. The problem is, if you're on these immunosuppressants, and if you get COVID, because we have data, we have 19 months of data now, the mortality rate is 20 to 30%, which is about equal to smallpox, or the more mild variant of Ebola. And yes, there is actually a mild variant of Ebola, which kills people at about a 30% rate. Surprise. There's more than one variant of Ebola. The things that you learn researching stuff. So that's part of the other problem. The next thing is that, hey, you must get vaccinated to get an organ transplant is not new. People have to get MMR booster. They need to get hepatitis B. They need to get varicella or zoster. And it goes back to the same thing. If they're not immunized and they have the organ transplant, they are much more susceptible to getting sick. Here's the third issue. the patient's conduct before a transplant and their willingness to follow a treatment plan is an indicator of how they will behave after a transplant. So if a person isn't doing the most basic things they need to do to save their own freaking life, then doctors aren't feeling really good about putting another organ, which, they aren't like, they're not calling up like organs are us. Yes, I need 4 kidneys, 3 lungs, and 2 hearts. Oh, and by the way, pancreas cells. I understand you have a buy one, get one free special going on today. Could you tell me more about that? No, it doesn't work that way. These are precious resources. And they want to give these precious resources to people that aren't going to abuse the precious resource. Alcoholics don't get liver transplants if they're still drinking. People that need lung transplants don't get lung transplants if they are still smoking. This is like established protocols and procedures. But there's another thing I want to call out here, which this whole argument from and there isn't an anti-vax movement. There is a disinformation movement that is a small percentage of very vocal, useful idiots, but there is no anti-vax movement. But the small percentage of people that are screaming about how unfair this is are the same people that are making YouTubes and TikToks and Instagrams of, I'm a pure blood. As a Jew, I find this incredibly offensive. And then they go, oh, no. That's from Harry Potter. It's not about the proof of bloodline from Nazi Germany. That's not what we're talking about. It's in the Harry Potter. The Harry Potter books were a metaphor, and the purebloods were a metaphor for the Nazis in World War II, you dumbass. I'm a pure blood because I haven't been vaccinated. And the people they're refusing blood products. Actually, to the point of killing themselves. There was a story that we reported on our TikTok, and we reported also in our stories on Malcontent News of a woman. Her husband got sick with COVID. He continued to get worse. He had to go in ICU. They put him on a ventilator. He needed to go on ECMO because his lungs were starting to get fibrosis. But when you go on ECMO, because ECMO is pulling your blood in and out, you need to get blood transfusions. So part of the paperwork was, here, you have to sign. And she refused because she's a pure blood. And so because she refused, he died. This is how committed they are to this whole frickin' pure blood thing. So I want to understand this from the anti-vax community, which is a small group of people. You're not going to take blood from someone who's been vaccinated, but you'll take a lung or a heart or a kidney or a liver? Really? Really? Because there's no way to guarantee that person wasn't vaccinated. And statistically speaking, across the United States, all adults, the person statistically probably was vaccinated. So now all of a sudden that organ is good enough for you? And then what? They don't need to do blood transfusions as part of an organ transplant? See, it's all a grift. It's not real. It's an illusion. And there is no anti-vax movement. What there is a disinformation campaign. Done. Moving on. Pointless to be. Yes, it is. If they're not going to listen, good. Personally, oh, wait a minute. I saw a comment about Jason Rantz. Jason Rantz was nice to me before I kicked him out of the community. Bite me from one Jew to another. Let's talk a little bit about travel advisories. There actually wasn't there wasn't a whole lot of COVID news today, but there's some stuff I'll talk about yesterday. On travel advisories, we dropped our travel advisory for South Central region and the 6 counties that were recognized as part of that. We dropped it earlier this week. The case numbers, it's still bad, but the case numbers have gotten worse. We never did like a full-on do not travel like we have in place with Idaho, Montana, and Alaska, and we're going to add Wyoming tomorrow. I ran out of time. I planned to add Wyoming tonight. We just didn't get it. So there, unofficially, don't go to Wyoming for anything. Because Wyoming right now is figuring out crisis standards of care. The government officials there are setting up a plan for crisis standards of care. We never brought things to South Central to a complete do not travel. It was no recreation travel. Eastern Washington, the Eastern Washington Hospital region, which is 9 counties, they're right on the line. And here, you know what? Let's pull up those numbers. Here we go. We'll pull this back over here, and we'll go like that, and then we're going to go like, boom. We'll bring myself back in there. Oh, that's the school districts. We don't want that. We want this. So here we see the eastern region, which is Adams, Asotin, Furry. Is it Asotin? Asses who don't get vaccinated. Furry, Garfield, Lincoln, Pendorel. Spokane, Stevens. I can't say this one. I don't know. Somebody tell me what an idiot I am in the chat here. Waukegan? I think Waukegan and Whitman counties. ICU occupancy is at 93.1%. Almost half of ICU patients have COVID. The acute care occupancy is at 89.2%, and 27.7% of acute care patients have COVID. This is how close we are to moving the East Hospital region to a recreational, no recreational travel advisory. If ICU occupancy goes to 95%, or ICU COVID patients go to 50% and ICU occupancy is over 90%, or if acute care occupancy goes over 90% and they're at 89.2 and it went up, the travel advisory is going to go up, because this is then indicative of you may have to wait to get proper medical care in the event that you have a medical emergency. Because remember, this isn't just about COVID. You could have a heart attack. You could have a stroke. You could be in a major car accident. And I'm going to say it again. I haven't said this in a while on a show. This is not the weekend coming up here to go, I'm going to take up hang gliding. I'm going to go on my first solo. This is, not the weekend for this. It's not. Hold off on those plans, because the hospitals are really strained. Now, you might be looking at Puget Sound and go, well, you're just being very elitist, because look at those Puget Sound numbers where King, Pierce, and Snohomish County are. You little snarky thing. 91% of the ICUs, 94% of acute care. Yeah, because we're taking transfer patients from the rest of the flippin' state. If we weren't taking the transfer patients, the rest of the state would just be a hot mess. And Eastern Washington is a hot mess because, as reported yesterday by officials and hospital management, they are now starting to see people from Idaho crossing in to Washington state, going into emergency departments and looking for medical care. Because the situation has actually gotten worse in the Panhandle over the last month since they declared crisis standards of care. And I cannot wait to talk about Janice McGeechan tonight. Holy shit. On the other side of the coin, if you look at the West region, the West region's the one in the entire state right now that things are, right? There's no red. There's a lot of yellow. There's one, they're below 80% utilization for ICUs. They're at 21.8% that have COVID. If that number goes below 20%, that will go normal. They're at 84.5% acute care. If that were to go below 80%, that goes to normal. 15.9% have COVID. If that goes below 10%, that would go normal. For whatever reason, the West Hospital region has fared better than almost all of the other regions through this entire pandemic. Rashi, yes. If it were up to me, there would be a trench dug along the Idaho border. It'd be filled with gasoline, and we would throw a match in it. And we would just keep gasoline going into that trench. Oh, you're from Eastern Washington. You want to go to Idaho? Okay, it's a one-way ticket. I want to go there. They don't have masks and stuff like that over there. Okay, one-way ticket. Enjoy staying in Idaho. It's fun. Gas is cheaper there, too. Can't wait to talk about Janice McGeechan tonight. Oh, my God. Stacy, you were a pilgrim in an unholy land, is what you were. Pfizer has applied for a COVID-19 vaccination emergency use authorization for children 5 to 11 years old. Most people are waiting for this, and anti-vaxxers' heads are exploding, and Russian misinformation trolls at this very moment are going as fast as they can. They're coming for your children, Chuck. There's going to be a hearing on October 26th. I would not expect a decision on October 26th or October 27th. It's a hearing. You may get a vote and a recommendation and then a fast follow. I've had a couple of people go, hey, do you know when the inside track? Yeah, I don't have an inside track in the FDA or at Pfizer. I'm spitballing it. November. Authorization in November, and I'm just spitballing it right now. United States hit a really grim milestone today. 704,000 people have died of COVID since the first official COVID death on February 29, 2020, right here in Kirkland, Washington. 352,000 people died in 2020. 352,000 people now have died in 2021. About the same number of people have died over the same period of time, because don't forget, you had 10 months, and we have about, right, because didn't have the first death until February 29 of 2020, so you have 2 months, technically, without any fatalities, and we're to mid-October, so we have about 2.5 months to go. So roughly the same period of time. Of course, what's one of the big differences in 2021? Well, the big differences is we've had a vaccine for all of 2021, and the number of people who are vaccinated since the vaccine became available who have died of COVID, 1.2%. 98.8% who have died in 2021 are unvaccinated. This preventable yeets. Malcontent News, home of the preventable yeet. So anyway, we're going to keep adding to that number. Yeah. Isn't it amazing being number one? Great legacy that we have here. Let's see, we talked about that. Back to school. There's really nothing like in the Bellevue, Lake Washington, North Shore school districts. There's a couple of schools that are but I wouldn't say there's anything like, hey, let's talk about this level that's there. Now we're just going to get into where my brain's going to melt. Let's talk about COVID in Alaska, first of all. So, while Mayor Dave Bronson of Anchorage, Alaska, insists that the hospital shortages are because of vaccine mandates, despite the fact that no data supports that whatsoever, and voiced his approval of people using the Star of David and Nazi comparisons to having to wear a mask. And then, because of outrage and rabbis and Holocaust survivors going, you asshole, they go, okay, maybe I shouldn't have gone that far. I didn't know, what? You didn't know about the friggin' Holocaust, dude? Really? And you know what? I'm going to go off on a real rant here. There was a guy who, after all of this happened, got up and addressed the city council specifically about this whole where people came in wearing the Star of David, and Dave Bronson, the mayor of Anchorage, Alaska, was like, right on. And he called him out for it and called out on the mask. And one of the city council members, I don't know her name, a woman goes, can you tell me, how people not wearing masks has directly impacted you? And he wasn't ready for that gotcha question. I'll answer that question for you, city councilor. Maybe somebody will see this video and will paste this little clip to her, because I'll answer that question for you from here in Seattle, Washington. City councilor, my wife is a doctor. anesthesiologist at a level 1 trauma hospital. She has been on the front lines of this fuckery since February 29, 2020. We came back from a trip. She was on a mission trip, city councilor, to Africa to help educate new anesthesiologists in Namibia. I was there to film the documentary as part of this effort. And we came back to a shit show. She's had people go, why won't you treat me for our sudden onset lung cancer? She's had to deal with people calling her a murderer. Now, you may have to be wondering right now, city councilor, what does any of this have to do with Anchorage, Alaska? Harborview Medical Center in Seattle is a lifeline to Alaska. We take your transfer patients here. And your reluctance to do even the minimal things to protect your citizens directly impacts my household, where my wife works 16-hour days, short-staffed, with patients that don't believe they're sick, and working with some of your transfer patients. And how does it directly impact me? It is taking precious time away in our household, where my burned out, exhausted wife has to care for your patients. There's your answer. Wear a goddamn mask. Moving on. That was cathartic. All right, Alaska. Alaska's come up with a brilliant way to drop the number of new cases. The number of new cases in Alaska has dropped sharply over the last week. It was up to the highest, it's still actually the highest level on the planet. It was up like around 1,200 statewide. 1,200 new cases, a 7-day moving average, not 14. Now they've got it down to about 766. They've come up with a brilliant plan. They're rationing COVID tests in the largest city, Anchorage. Because of course they are. See, they signed a contract with a company to do the test. That company is paid $98 a test. My head is freaking exploding. And that contract was set to end on October 30. And what's happened is so many people have gotten sick, and there's so many people now looking for a COVID test that they've basically burned through the contract money, and the contract money is going to run out on October 18. So instead of, gee, I guess we have to write another check, because don't forget, they have a shit ton of federal dollars set up just for this. But oh no, we don't want to spend that money, because then we would have to admit we have a COVID problem. And so instead, we're going to ration the tests. So guess what's been happening to test positivity in the state of Alaska? It's going up because people can't get tested, and there's more people that get. Who are they testing? The sickest people. I'm looking for a number here. Oh, here we go. At the current level of new cases in Alaska, 1% of the entire population is going to test positive for COVID every 8 days. 1%. That's nuts. They have the highest new case rate on the planet. If they were a country, they would have the highest new case. Like, nobody's even close. But it's okay. They're up to 26 ICU beds that are available in the great state of Alaska right now. There's a scandal that's happened also in Alaska at Peace Health. If you're going Peace Health, where have I heard that, right? They're based out of Washington State, 6,000 employees. They have hospitals in Oregon, Washington, Alaska. There's a scandal that's blown up at Peace Health in Ketchikan. Traveling nurse came up from Louisiana. She started up there in April of this year. And, on the pretty good gig if you think about it, right? My Ketchikan can. My Ketchikan's can's nice. It just rains all the freaking time. It's a beautiful place, though. And while she was there, she observed what she felt was actions being taken by the hospital that were unsafe for patients. And what she claimed specifically was, if I'm looking off, it's because I'm reading here. She said that they had patients who were intubated, one person that was on continuous BiPAP. So BiPAP is like really high flow. That is one step away from being on a ventilator. These people belong in an ICU, but they weren't in an ICU. They put them in med-surg. And and even though there were open ICU beds, and they had a person on a ventilator in med-surg with open ICU beds and staff to care for them, but they kept them in med-surg. The problem is that the monitoring for alarms, either for there's problems with the ventilator, problems with the patient, it's not set up in med-surg like it is in ICU. And so she told somebody hey, this isn't right. And they were like, you know what? You're right. You should go and tell hospital administration. So she did. And she got fired 4 days later on August 24. Now, here's where the scandal happens. On September 28th, the hospital reported that Sherry Dunlay, who was the interim director of acute care, so that's where, right, med-surg is acute care. Yeah, they got yeeted on September 28th. They just, poof, they disappeared. And Peace Health isn't saying anything. But the rec for her job is up there. So anyway, 3 hospitals operating at crisis standards of care level in Alaska. Their main hospital in Anchorage, their biggest one. Hospital in Bethel that largely serves an indigenous community, and the hospital in Valdez. The hospital in Valdez is a very small hospital, and they are specifically rationing oxygen. They're not rationing care, but they're having to ration oxygen, and that is part of their crisis standards of care protocol. Idaho. It's like, where do you friggin' start here? There's so much to unpack. So Idaho statewide is in crisis standards of care. Their hospital system is literally collapsed. You have corpses being stored in railroad cars. You have corpses that would normally be cremated that they're having to embalm so that they can store the body outside of refrigeration and get around to cremating them later because there's not enough crematorium. The state has asked for, oh my God. The state has asked for volunteers. They've asked for FEMA assistance. They've asked for federal assistance. They've got and even with all of that, the situation has just gotten worse over the last month, particularly up in the Panhandle. So what does Governor Brad Little do on Monday when he has a state in abject crisis? People dying in their homes, people dying in hospital waiting rooms. He does what any other governor in that situation would do. He goes to Texas with 9 other Republican governors because we got to stand by Greg Abbott, who's probably planning to run for president for 2024. And we got illegal aliens coming over the border. They might come to Idaho. They don't want to come to Idaho. No sane or rational person would want to go to Idaho. If there are undocumented immigrants who are thinking about going to Idaho, please talk to me first. I will talk you out of it. Governor Brad Little, you can pay me for these conversations. Now, Brad Little is super conservative, but Janice McGeachin, the lieutenant governor, is out of her freaking mind. That is belittling to people with mental illness. Speaking as somebody who is neurodivergent, no, Janice McGeachin is out of her tits. She is out of her mind. She is insane. She is a sociopath. Or she is nuts. And what does Janice McGeachin do? less than 24 hours after Brad Little goes down for his photo op on the Texas border. Well, she signs an executive order blocking all COVID testing and for K through 12 students and vaccine passports. And then, oh wait, it gets better. She tries to activate the Idaho National Guard, the same Idaho National Guard that is trying to keep people from dying in the state of Idaho right now, to deploy them to the border in Texas. Now, fortunately, the command general of the Idaho National Guard was like, you can't do that. And I am not following your batshit crazy order. And Governor Brad Little called her out on Twitter, because this is what Republicans use now for diplomacy into each other. And basically was like, this is disgusting and it's unconstitutional, you stupid git. And the other thing that Brad Little said is that when my happy ass gets back to Idaho, I am rescinding your executive order. He was on the ground for 8 minutes on Wednesday. And it's like the first thing he did was rescind the executive order there. And here's the thing. Janice McGeachin has a real crack at being the governor in 2022 for the state of Iowa. No exaggeration. And sane and rational Republicans are so terrified of her becoming governor that a group of Republican leaders in that state are basically going to Democrats and independents and going, look, you got to face facts. You could put Jesus on the ticket as a Democrat, like you could get the real Jesus, not an undocumented immigrant named Jesus. You could get the real Jesus. Put him on the ticket as a Democrat, and he ain't winning as governor in Idaho. Which is true. For the love of God, to stop Janice McGeachin, just for the primary, please register as Republican and friggin' vote for somebody else than her. And let's get her out of the primary. That's how batshit crazy Janice McGeachin is. And I'm telling you, she has a real crack at being governor at Idaho. It'd be like having Somalia right next to. And that isn't a slam on black people. It is a slam that one of the things I always point out on Somalia is that Somalia is a libertarian dream. There's almost no government. Everything is solved by guns. You can kind of do whatever you want there. There's no real environmental regulations. There's no social safety net. It's just basically who has the biggest gun, the most money, and screams the loudest. That's how everything's resolved. It's a libertarian dream. People of Idaho, move to Somalia. You'll love it there. Idaho is seeing an increase in stillbirths because it's well documented that COVID-19 is very negative, has very negative impacts on pregnant women. They have 150 pregnant women in the hospitals in Idaho, 97% of them unvaccinated. And I'm going to pause here. I'm not a woman, right? My end of the reproductive right thing is it's 20 minutes on a good day. That's my contribution to the reproductive rights situation. And I will say I understand medical decisions, this is really deeply personal choices for women. I totally get it. But there is a ton of data out there. And here's the other thing. And I know most people that aren't rational aren't going to listen to me. Ivermectin's a class C drug. Ivermectin, when it was developed and tested, caused birth defects in animals. It was never tested in humans for birth defects because it caused birth defects in animals, which means it would be immoral to test it on humans. But because it's a class C drug, that means that women who are attempting to get pregnant, women who are pregnant, women who are breastfeeding should not take ivermectin because there is a documented history with animals that it causes birth defects. So if you're a woman and you're pregnant and you're taking ivermectin because you don't want to take the COVID vaccine, get yourself educated. And if you're still like, then my empathy is drained. All right, that's enough about Idaho. Let's move to the great state of Montana, which has also got hospitals operating in the crisis standards of care. Montana's come up with a really unique solution for dealing with their problems. They just don't report a lot of data. And if we just don't report a lot of data, then like, it's not real. It's not happening. Hospitalizations have increased 40% in a month there. Oh, and by the way, they're as bad as Alaska on the new case rate growth. That is, every 8 days at the current rate of new cases in the state of Montana, 1% of people in Montana become COVID positive. The hospitalization rate for COVID in Montana is over 5%. That means every 8 days they are adding almost 600 people that are going to end up in the hospital. And the infection rate, the new case rate is going up there. They have 465 people now hospitalized across the state. Billings Clinic, which I believe is the largest hospital, is starting to convert the waiting area into the emergency room because they have so many patients. And they have hospitals there operating at crisis standards of care. Oh, wait, there's more. The Montana Hospital Association has asked the governor to use federal relief dollars that they have to contract traveling nurses so that they can increase the staffing levels and support more patients because they're completely overwhelmed. They're not asking for Montana dollars. They're asking for federal dollars out of the America Cares Act that was signed by the Biden administration in March of 2021. The money's there. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not gonna spend that money. No, you suck it up, buttercups. It's like Alaska, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming are like running the Hunger Games. It's just freedom. Brothers, my rights and freedoms, damn it. All right, Wyoming. I'm trying to keep moving here. Wyoming has 217 people in the hospital. They have had 12 pediatric patients in September. You might be going, well, 12, right? 578,000 people live in the entire state of Montana. That is 25% of King County. 12 pediatric patients is a lot. And this was something that we reported on this about a month ago. And some hospital officials in Wyoming raised the red flag on this about a month ago, going, we're going to have a real problem with pediatric patients. The concern that they had is they don't have a lot of resources. They don't have a dedicated children's hospital in the entire state. What Wyoming does with really sick pediatric patients is they send them to Utah. They send them to Colorado. They may send them to Eastern Washington. And they're like, all these states are like, we can't take your patients, right? Utah's got its own problems. Colorado's hitting a peak. Nowhere near as bad as these 4 states. But they're not really taking transfer patients. Washington State still is, from Idaho in particular. We should build a trench and put gasoline in it. That's what I get it. It's not the moral or ethical thing to do. But when you FAFO, F-A-F-O, look it up. When you FAFO, there should be consequences when you FAFO. And people like Janice McGeechan are not feeling the consequences. I'm sorry, I'm drifting back to Idaho. 10 Wyoming facilities are at a critical staffing shortage. 11 are anticipating they will be at a staffing shortage. It has nothing to do with all those vaccines. Oh, it's Wyoming. There's like no friggin' vaccine mandates out there. It's Wyoming. They didn't have enough people to begin with, and the doctors and nurses there are saying enough, and they friggin' are quitting because they've had to put up with this bullshit for 19 to 20 months of friggin' like combat conditions. And they all friggin' believed in May and June, we won. And you took it away from them because of disinformation. Let's talk a little bit more about disinformation. 7 hospitals have no ICU beds available, and 4 only had 1 available. And you're like, well, okay, that's 11 hospitals. Wyoming only has 37 hospitals total. 1 is a veterans hospital. The 2 largest hospitals only have about 200 beds each. Again, it's 578,000 people. So actually, and not all hospitals have ICUs. In the state of Idaho, there's a lot of acute care hospitals. People will go to those hospitals for basic stuff, overnight hernia repairs and shit like that, or car accident and they broke their leg and we got to get it stabilized. Or they go into their emergency departments, they get stabilized, and they're transferred by helicopter or ambulance to places like Cheyenne or Cody that have much bigger hospitals there. So anyway, there's one other thing. I'm going to circle back to Idaho for a minute, because there is some comeuppance. We have to talk about some comeuppance in Idaho. I want to talk about Peter Coulson. Peter Coulson was notice I said was. So you already know where this story is going. He was 67 years old. Peter Coulson was on a education committee that Janice McGeachin, batshit crazy lieutenant governor of the state of Idaho, who has a real chance of being the full-on governor of the state of Idaho in 2022, set up a education committee called the Indoctrination Task Force. I'm not kidding you. That's literally what they called it, the Indoctrination Task Force. Somewhere in hell, Goebbels go, yeah, very good. That's good. Yeah, very impressive. I'm so impressed with you. Yeah. So what was the indoctrination task, or what is the indoctrination task force tasked with? Why, they're looking for people in critical race theory and people that are going to try and teach real American history. Like the Thanksgiving story is pretty much bullshit. That Columbus was a genocidal maniac, a terrible sea captain, a worse navigator. He really was. I mean, why are you changing? It's the truth. You were sold a bunch of Italian bullshit. And I could say that I'm 25% Italian. I'm an Italian Jew. I was raised on violent guilt. Bite me, Jason Rant. Gritty loves Fafo. All the kids just run for Fafo cereal. Fafo cereal. It's just Pop Rocks in a can of Coca-Cola. And don't forget, you can try Diet Fafo cereal. That's a package of Mentos and a bottle of Diet Coke. Fafo cereal. Get some today. Tonight's show is brought to you by Fafo cereal. Peter Coulson went around and liked to tell people, I am vaccinated by Christ. One of the things I've learned about Christ is that Christ has an amazing sense of humor. And Christ is a salty, salty guy. A lot of snark in that dude. Because Christ went, oh, okay, you want a Fafo? All right. Put your faith in me. Peter Coulson got COVID. And of course, he did what any other true believer did. He stayed at home and he did his do-it-yourself. Oh, no, he didn't do any of that. He went and took up a hospital bed for 3 weeks. And Peter Coulson died. Now, here's the other thing, is that Janice McGeachin was asked today about Peter Coulson, and then she was like, I don't know. Like, what are you talking about? Because of course she did. But then she backtracked, and she made a statement later on in the day. I am deeply saddened at the loss of Peter Coulson, as I'm sure everyone in the Treasure Valley is. By the way, the wasn't included in there. This is who you want to be your governor? He was loved by everyone who knew him, and he will be greatly missed. And I'm praying for his family. Oh, I just can't. These are our neighbors, and they're sending us their patients. And I'm out of patience with them. All right, I want to talk about this. This is a story that's gotten a lot of traction. Let me go ahead and pull this up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Boom! There we are. And let me make this a little smaller. All right, maybe not. Let's do this. We'll go like this. And everyone's like, ooh, sexy Excel spreadsheet. That's actually, you want to see the sexy Excel spreadsheet there? All it is just, someone screenshot that right now. Quick. All it is this is where we track all of our data for the report. That's all it is. So there you go. Nothing crazy there. Sorry. Let me go like this. There. Now you can kind of see everything that is there. I don't know if I go F11, will it kill that top bar, or will it just go ahead and full screen it? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, so you're gonna have to see the top of it. I know it looks all unprofessional. I want to talk about this. One of the largest producers of COVID misinformation on TikTok was a cook at Cascade Medical Center. I don't know if you all have read this story here, but if you haven't, we did this story with that Dinesh guy on TikTok. He is a guy that does a lot of research on people that do bad things, and he writes a story on that. So back in early 2021, there was a individual that went by the screen name of Bloody TNVC5, tried to set up another account under Bloody TNVC6 that got shut down very, very quickly. He is one of the most prolific spreaders of COVID misinformation on TikTok. Also was a prolific spreader of anti-Semitism, racial hatred, sexism, and he was a ghost. Like, there were people that wanted him off the air. Cancel culture! No, because, dude, literally killing people with his information. Bragging that he was selling fake vaccination cards, had pictures of what appears to be weapons that would be illegal in the United States. Of course, his whole life was a fantasy, so we don't know if that's true or not. And so people started doing really hardcore research to figure out what was going on and who this person really was. And there were a couple of things that happened that ended up putting all the pieces of the puzzle together and literally unmasking this person. And I say literally because in TikTok, they never showed themselves. If they were talking, what they would use is the mask of King Tut, the face of King Tut, right? This burial mask in a lot of the videos. And then the other thing would only work with his hands, and he was wearing blue medical gloves, and he always presented himself as a doctor. And it was very clear from the videos that he was doing that there were videos done in examination rooms, in surgical suites. There was medical equipment in them. And of course, he had access to surgical gloves. And he seemed knowledgeable about medicine. How's this cooking? The word is he actually was a pretty good cook, by the way. But he made two key mistakes. They were small, but they were enough to pull the pieces of the puzzle together. And he had someone else helping him, a woman, and she made one mistake. And what happened is in one video that they made, she appeared in that video. Now, she's dressed like a nurse, has a mask on, but there was enough of her face there to go, okay, we have a face. Now we just have to figure out the where. And if we could figure out the where, then we could send this information to the where and go, is this one of your employees? And when I say we, I'm talking about the people researching. We just reported. We're not involved in the research on this. The other mistake that was made is that in one of the videos, there was a very clear view of like the waiting area or the lobby of the medical facility that they were in. And of course, if you read the headline, we started on this, they're in Leavenworth. And if you're part of our national audience and you're not familiar with Leavenworth, Washington, Leavenworth, Washington started out as a boom town in the timber industry. And it was a boom town all the way through World War II and into the 40s. And it's because there was a rail line running by. And then sometime late 40s or early 1950s, the railroad killed the line. Part of the reason was it was built along a river and edge of mountains and cliffs. And there were rock falls and washouts all the time. And so they pulled the rail line. And Leavenworth, like everything just evaporated. And by 1960... Leavenworth was destined to be a ghost town. If you went to Leavenworth today, it would be really hard to believe that this was the state that Leavenworth was in, 60-ish, well, I guess it's a while now, 60-ish plus years ago. The city leaders, the civic leaders of Leavenworth went, we have idea. We will create new building codes. We will adopt a Bavarian-themed town. We will adopt Bavarian architecture. We will create a tourist destination. We will have Oktoberfest. We'll have German restaurants. There are a fair number of Germans that settled into Seattle, into Washington State. And this is what we're going to do. And it was like an instant success. It literally saved the town. They have Oktoberfest. They're known for an amazing Christmas festival there and Christmas lights. It's in a beautiful location, and it is the closest town to a major ski area. I'm always amazed at Stevens Pass, unlike Snoqualmie, that there is no hotel, that there's no nothing up there in that Stevens Pass area, and that you either have to go basically, to Monroe on the one side, or you need to go to Leavenworth on the other side if you want to stay overnight after skiing at Stevens. Always sidebar on that. But they have very, very specific rules on architecture. Even the McDonald's in the town is sent up like, this is good, is a German. German McDonald's, And that includes Cascade Medical Center. And the entry, the waiting area, the entrance area has this very Bavarian-themed architecture. And Bloody TNVC5, a.k.a. Blue Gloves, Blue Hands, because he wore the blue gloves, Blue Hands, had a video of this very unique architecture in the waiting area. Had it not been for the distinctive architecture of Leavenworth, it might still be making videos, right? If it was just generic hospital waiting room, that'd be really hard to identify. But it's not. It's very unique. And so they were able to figure out the medical facility. And then they were able to go to human resources and go, here we go. Here is the stuff they're putting on the internet. Here is this face of this person that we believe is one of your employees, the woman. And this is our proof that we believe that it is your hospital, Cascade Medical Center, where this is going on because of this very unique architecture in this one video that we have there. 2 mistakes. And they were like, yep, that's our employee. And they put the screws to her. And there's no honor among thieves. And when they put the screws to her, she gave up the other guy because she didn't want to take the heat. And the other guy's name is Matthew Wilson. And Matthew Wilson made one other mistake. Because then what happened was the hospital went and told that Dinesh guy, we fired 2 people. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know. And so Guilt, that's a name of a creator on TikTok, that Dinesh guy and their research team. And I know this feeling when we've done stuff where it's like, and now we wait, right? Because you want the mainstream. We're going to let the bigger press grab the story, right? Now we wait. And it didn't happen. And it didn't happen. And it didn't happen. And it didn't happen. And they're like, wait a minute, something's not right. We're missing something. Because they thought Blue Gloves was a doctor. And let's face it, if you had a doctor that works in a hospital spreading COVID misinformation and they got fired, that's kind of big news. So they went back and they did some more digging. And then they discovered that Bloody TNVC5 made one more mistake, a tiny one. In one video, they didn't wear the gloves. They were always very careful to only show their hands wearing surgical gloves. But in one video, they didn't. Now, why is that significant? Dude, the only way I could identify you from your hands is, maybe this little funky bump on there. Bloody TNVC5 is black, which is really shocking because of the hatred that he espoused of black culture in particular. And if you're black and you're in Leavenworth, because of the history of Washington State and the history of this state being founded under racist grounds, and we're a state that's only 4% black, and if you get into Eastern Washington, the percentages are even smaller, you're going to stand out. So they went through and started looking at the employees directory and on LinkedIn, and they could only find one black man, and that was Matthew Wilson. And Matthew Wilson was the cook. He wasn't a doctor at all. He was the cook. And again, I can't share. We linked to the milder stuff. There is no sharing the worst stuff. We've taken off the air in 5 seconds, which TikTok is a dumpster fire when it comes to moderation. It's a complete dumpster fire. So, this crazy story out of Leavenworth. He's off the air, as far as we can presume. And most of the time when people get called out to this degree, they stay off the air for a while. They maintain a low profile. As far as the selling the fake vaccination cards, that allegedly this has been reported to the FBI. The issue of the potentially illegal weapons has been reported to the ATF. He has been reported to the Washington Department of Health of essentially practicing as a doctor without a license based on the video content that he did. As far as the person who was helping him, that was Alyssa Riggs, who is out of By the way, these names are public. Don't be going after these people. I am really anti-dox. Do not be going after these people. They've been called out. They are facing the consequences. They have FAFO'd, and now the consequences are coming down hard. So don't be going after these people. Because we actually know a lot more. Like addresses, and we're not going to share any of that stuff. And no. I'm real serious. I've called out people from our side on the whole doxing thing. No. I'm going to say it right now. Anyway, Alyssa Riggs, 21. She went to college 3 years for dental hygiene. Now, I don't know if that was part-time college or whatever. Couldn't find anything indicating that she has a medical license anywhere in the state of Washington, which in a way could be a blessing for her because in theory, she could then go apply. And because she wasn't in the past, it doesn't appear like her conduct went to a level of criminality, unlike Matthew Wilson, where allegedly, and it's his self-owned, it's his self-claims. But I say allegedly because I don't want to get sued by Matthew Wilson. But allegedly, based on his own self-claims, he has allegedly offered to sell fake vaccine cards, which is a federal crime. He has illegal weapons that he bragged about in video that TikTok never took down when you're not even supposed to show guns if you read their terms and conditions and community guidelines. Dumpster fire. So, but she in theory could go on to be a dental hygienist somewhere else. And honestly, I don't know what happened to her in 2017. She was feted, if you're not feted, celebrated by then the mayor of Leavenworth, for kind of like doing great work in high school and being a future leader. And she was on the dean's list. Public information. Her first year in college, she was in the dean's list. So I don't know what happened. It's that part of it is the sad story here. Okay, there's so much here we got to cover. Actually, I think we've actually covered a shit ton of ground in about 55 minutes. I want to talk about Jessica Berg Wilson. We reported this. We put a TikTok up. We put it on our Twitter. We put it on our Facebook. We wrote about this for 2 days. Jessica Berg Wilson is the 4th person in the United States to die from a COVID-19 related vaccine injury. She is, according to the Seattle Times, the 45th person to have this VITT, an extremely rare complication specific to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the United States. The AstraZeneca vaccine is not used in the United States. It's used in a lot of other places in the world. That is also a viral vector vaccine, and that also has this issue with VITT, actually at a much higher rate than the Johnson & Johnson vaccine does. And a little pause for the cause. Spam those hearts. Go ahead and spam those hearts. Let our mods and admins know that you really appreciate the great and hard work that they do. They need your love. Oh yeah, K Variable, you're total free labor on all of these free. Right now, I'm free labor on 3 social media platforms right now, and they get to monetize my own content. Please become the patron or Venmo me so you can to the platforms that we're on. But go ahead and spam those hearts. Let those mods and admins know that you really appreciate all the great and hard work that they're doing there for you. Washington State Department of Health confirmed that she died. There was a whole here with this because story broke out of Oregon on her obituary. Twitter labeled the tweets that were going out about this, not quite misinformation, but kind of like, this needs context. And people were like, The obituary is certainly written with political overtones in it, which of course is going to raise suspicion for anybody who is looking at that. 1 second here. Ooh. Okay. All right. You too. Yikes. Okay. Hi, back everybody. Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent sends hearts. Okay. We were talking about Jessica Berg Wilson. The obituary was definitely politically tinged. There were some other things in the obituary that would have a rational person going, oh, wait a minute, there's some things here. We reported on this the same day that this obituary came out, looked in the VAERS database, and we took VAERS with a big grain of salt, right? Because anybody can put whatever they want in VAERS. But in Washington State, there was an entry for Johnson & Johnson Janssen vaccine, woman 30 to 39 years old, fatality from the vaccine. And I was like, okay. So we presented a story 2 days ago with like, here's the obituary. Here's what happened over at Twitter. We did some digging. There are signs to the point that this probably really did happen. But you know what? There's also some other signs here that we're scratching our head. And flat out said on Twitter, we're not saying this is fake news. All we're saying is we got questions. I think I wrote that word for word when we posted this up on our Twitter account. We put something more professional and softer in the story. Washington State Secretary of Health yesterday confirmed the death. He didn't confirm by name, but certainly we and other media organizations put all the pieces together and lined all of this up. VITT is a really rare complication specific to the viral vector vaccines. In the United States, that's a single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This is not a complication with Pfizer, Comirnaty, I don't know how you say the name, or the Moderna vaccine. It is, I'm kind of just scrolling to where the story is. There have been 4 deaths. There's been 45 cases of this. Back on April 23rd, when the FDA paused wow, I love that, Catherine. Thank you so much. When they paused the distribution of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it was specifically because of VITT. They had reported about a couple of dozen potential VITT cases, and at that time, they were investigating 6 deaths. Upon the investigation, they concluded 3 were vaccine injuries, 3 were unrelated. Part of the problem, and part of the reason that they did the pause, is when a person comes into the emergency, I'm not a doctor, I'm going to preface that. When a person comes into an emergency department and a person appears to have blood clots, it is very common to go, okay, we're going to give you anticoagulating drugs to help break up the clots and everything will be better afterwards. Very common here. And heparin is a very common drug to give. For an emergency department doctor, this is pretty close to blood clot 101, particularly if you have an otherwise healthy patient in front of you. Unfortunately, because of the way the COVID work, the manner of COVID, and the vaccine doesn't contain COVID, but it teaches your body how to respond to COVID. And heparin is contraindicated. I know that's a big word, and I'm not trying to be patronizing. I know for some people, well, it's contraindicated. It means it's a no-no. It means you make things worse. And that was part of the problem. And this is part of the reason that they were doing the pause, because for the 3 women who had died, and it was 3 women who had, and we'll get into why this happens more with women. There's been a couple of cases with men. No fatalities. All the fatalities involve women. But for the people that had died, they were given this contraindicated treatment. There were other patients who became very, very sick, and the physicians that were working on them, who started with a contraindicated regimen of treatment, were like, okay, I don't think this is working, so we got to try something different. And the something different worked in those cases. So part of the 5-week pause was to create guidance to say, if a person comes into your emergency department, they've had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine within the last 45 days, and they present with these symptoms, this is what you need to do, and here are the things you don't do, no matter what. And here's a phone number you need to call. That was part of the reason they had to do the pause. And let's not forget here, right? Because one of the things there's thousands of people dying from vaccines injuries, and they're hiding it, and they're covering it up, and it's murder. They stopped the distribution of an entire vaccine, over 6 potential deaths, and 24 people landing in emergency rooms. That was the bar. And I'm not saying this in any way to disparage Jessica Bird-Willett, who did nothing wrong. Let's be really, really clear here. She did nothing wrong. Zilch. She did the right thing. So it's a rare condition. It happens in women 4 times more than men. It particularly happens in women of child rearing ages, and particularly from 18 to 55, but particularly from 30 to 55. Women who have certain other existing medical conditions or have a history of blood clot issues in their family have a slightly elevated chance. Because remember, this is a 2 out of a million, 3 out of a million people. That's how rare this is. This is really rare. We're talking your odds of dying from VITT, from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, is about equal to you dying of snake bite in the United States. It's literally about at the same level. This is of no comfort to Jessica's husband, children, and family. Zero comfort. I want to be really clear. I'm not making excuses. I'm just explaining the facts. And particularly 30. The other thing is, if a woman's on birth control, hormonal-based birth control, whether that's oral, whether that's an implant, whether that's a ring, a vaginal ring, that also elevates just a little bit. Not all of this is just tiny, tiny, tiny elevation. Tons of questions, right? Right. There are tons, right? And we're not going to get answers, because I understand the family's fury. I really do. Even if their view was anti-vax to begin with, I really understand the family's fury. And I think it's well placed. I really do. And my heart goes out to her family. I am not questioning their words or their actions or anything on this. Now, we'll have to see what comes out of this next. But we're certainly never going to learn, was there a history of blood? And at the end of the day, none of this stuff elevates the odds. The other thing that we don't know is when she showed up in an emergency department somewhere, we don't know if she got the right course of treatment. We don't know if the emergency physicians went. First of all, we also don't know if the emergency physicians knew the history that she had recently got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's part one. And then if they knew that, we also don't know, did they give her contraindicated medications? There's a lot of questions still. Here's the bottom line of this. No drug, no vaccine is 100% safe. You can literally die from taking an aspirin tablet. You can look it up. There was somebody in the comments. What was it? This is so long ago, right? If you're Gen X, like if you're millennial or you're Gen Z, you don't even know about this. If you're Gen X, we had baby aspirin. We were given chewable. You remember chewable baby aspirin? They were orange flavored. And they were these little chewable little baby aspirin things, and they didn't, they tasted a little better than a Necco wafer. And I say that as someone who likes Necco wafers. They tasted slightly better than a Necco wafer. Look, people here are going, yup, right? And then they discovered that aspirin caused, St. Joseph's Children's aspirin, right? And then they discovered that baby aspirin was causing these thousands of cases of a very, very serious complication. There you go, Mama KDM. I remember I found out I was allergic. There you go. Thank you so much. I cannot for the life of me remember what the name of that complication was. I'm going to look it up. Baby aspirin complication stopped kids. It's a syndrome. I can't remember. Gosh darn, I can't remember the name of the syndrome it caused. I just typed in and there's like all these things here. Why you should never give your kid baby aspirin or aspirin. Ray's syndrome. That's what it was. It caused Ray's syndrome. Aspirin. I mean, this was sickening thousands of kids. And this is something that was sickening. This wasn't like something that just all of a sudden happened. This was sickening thousands of kids. They just didn't figure it out until the 80s. And again, if you were a wee little kid in the 70s or 80s, Gen X, you ate freaking baby aspirin like it was like anytime you're like, I don't feel baby aspirin. Take a baby aspirin. Ray's syndrome causes brain damage. It could destroy your liver, causes seizures, coma. Kids died. Aspirin. Look it up. REYE. If you're like, you're lying, you're just trying to justify that jab. If you say jab, we know you're in Russian misinformation. As soon as you say jab, oh, you're a Russian operative. Done. That's how we know how to spot you. And when I say we, that's not like me and Malcontent News. I mean, that's like everybody who looks for this stuff. We see jab. Look it up. REYE. Try to find baby aspirin for little kids in the store in the United States. I don't mean like the antique store. Like try to go in Walgreens. Try to buy baby aspirin for kids. Or look in the back of the box of aspirin where there's going to be all warnings on there. Do not give this to kids. It can cause Reye syndrome. It's REYES, not rye. I see all this stuff here, rye. It's REYE. Everyone. REYE there. I put it in the comments. Y'all spelling it wrong. The bottom line is this. There is no safe medication. There's nothing that is 100% safe. There's also nothing that is 100% effective. Nothing. There's risk. If you are vaccine hesitant, although I have a feeling that people who are vaccine hesitant don't watch our show, but if you are vaccinated, or if somebody stumbles on this and goes, hey, look at this asshole, and you're vaccine hesitant, you're on the fence, I'm going to talk to you for a minute. Talk to your doctor, like person with MD next to their name. Talk to a doctor, not an online consultation with someone who's going to write you an ivermectin prescription for a $149 5-minute visit online and then overcharge you to send you the ivermectin pills. You're being grifted. That's a grift. Talk to a doctor and talk to them about what is the best vaccination option for you. As a woman, if you're a woman and you are of childbearing age and maybe you're taking and you're using hormone-based contraceptives, maybe the Johnson & Johnson vaccine isn't right for you. If you are a woman and you have a family history of, say, phlebitis, or a family history of other blood clotting issues, then maybe the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is the one right for you. But VITT is not a complication of Moderna, and it is not a complication of Pfizer. What about the myocarditis and large heart thing? That is almost exclusively in men, and particularly men that are of teenage years and in their 20s, and it is very, very rare, and it very rarely reaches like a clinical, you have to be hospitalized level. So for women, unless you have other underlying health conditions, that one's probably you don't have to worry about. But I've talked enough about this, and I think I've tried to honor and respect Jessica Berg Wilson's husband, children, and family. I when all the pictures came into place, I get the rage. I wish that some of your language, I will say this, I wish some of your language wasn't as tinged in politics as it was, but I really do understand your rage. I see you, I hear you, I understand you. And my heart is legitimately broken for you. It shouldn't have happened. And unfortunately, it did. She was bitten by a snake. And there's no comfort in those words. I get it. But I did want to talk to that. And part of the reason I wanted to talk about it is I think that there are people on the pro-vaccination side, and I'm definitely pro-vac, that don't want to talk about it. And if we hide from the truth, even if the truth is uncomfortable, then what good are we? Because then the claims of, you're just paid government agents, George Soros, Antifa, you're going to die from that jab pokey thing in 2 years. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. If those 2 years predictions are true, vaccination trials in the United States start in April. That means people are going to be starting to drop dead in 6 months. I know you're just going to move the goalposts. Okay, we've talked enough about that. Let's talk about Texas for a little bit. Federal judge said, hey, yeah, that abortion thing you're doing there in Texas, yeah, get bent. They wrote 113 pages on why they should get bent. And at least it is temporarily stopped at this time. This will work its way to the Supreme Court. And then this really becomes the big question. When it eventually reaches the way to the Supreme Court, where are they going to? I see this. I saw something about, I want the app to. Hello, Julia Child here. Today we're going to be making a lovely spice cake cupcakes with apple-flavored ivermectin frosting. Oh, it's going to be so delightful. Wow, it's a long-ass comment. I'm going to read it, though. Oh, Kristen, thank you so much. See, look at that. That's amazing. Thank you. I love it. Thank you. Amen. Can we talk? Oh, wait a minute. My understanding is that the Senate voted tonight not to destroy, like literally destroy the United States of America. To raise the debt ceiling for a few months. And we're just going to continue to go through this bullshit now of raising the debt ceiling for every couple of months. This is why I hate the Democratic Party, right? Because the Democratic Party was just rubber stamping when Trump was president, raising the debt ceiling. Okay. Well, yeah, okay. We'll do that. Okay. Because maybe if we cooperate with the sociopath former social media icon, he'll be nicer to us. You guys should have, that's what you should have done. And you could have filibustered in the Senate. And then you could have maybe gone, yeah, that whole debt ceiling thing. Yeah. We'd really like to raise that, but we'd rather drive the country over a cliff. Now, we would consider raising the debt ceiling if, this whole Supreme Court seat that's open thing, we put somebody that's more in the middle than who you've picked. And if you're going to tell us to get fucked on that idea, then enjoy hitting the debt ceiling and destroying the United States. And we're going to blame you in the next election for it because we offered a reasonable deal to do, right? Because that's what Republicans do. And what Democrats do. Oh, okay. Come here, doggy. Let me give you a cookie so I can kick you one more time. Come here, doggy. Okay, I'll come here again. Like, Jesus Christ. Let's talk about Eric Whitehead. I want to talk. Who here remembers Eric Whitehead? Blow it up in the comments if you remember who Eric Whitehead is. I'm looking here for the comments. That got dark. Kellen, oh my God, how are you, my darling? I haven't seen your comments in a long time. Nobody remembers Eric Whitehead? I see the numbers are going down. I know it's getting late. No one remembers. Okay. Eric Whitehead, back on January 15th, was in a unnamed hospital emergency room. It's unnamed. We could speculate. Everyone's kind of pretty sure that it's Harborview, but that is speculation. It's never been named. No one's ever been named in this. Eric Whitehead refused to wear a mask. And January 15th, things were really shitty, if you remember. We were at a peak back. Dark is what David does best. I don't know how to take that. We were at like a peak that was the second worst, only worse than the peak that we just had. And a nurse came up and said, hey, you need to wear a mask. Now, Eric Whitehead took the mask and then was like, didn't put it on. So the nurse came back over and was like, I didn't give you the mask to hold it. I'm paraphrasing it. You got to wear the mask. And Eric Whitehead was like, get bent. I mean, he didn't say get bent, but gave a condescending and rude answer to the point that she's like, I'm going to go tell the charge nurse if you're not remotely in med. I was an EMT. That's as close as I've ever gotten to medicine. But as an EMT, you go to emergency departments, and I've seen angry charge nurses in my EMT career. I enlisted. I crashed and burned at MEPS because they discovered a medical condition that I didn't know about. My life would be totally different if I went in there. But in another life, I still remember First Sergeant McGovern very, very vividly. And the reason I mention this is that some charge nurses remind me of first sergeants. And I think there's some people out, they, in the sense that, yes, they can be wonderful people, but boy, oh boy, when they're the night. So anyone would go to charge nurse. Supervisor came out, security supervisor, and was like, you go put on the mask, right? And he's like, whatever, dude, get bent. Again, that's not the exact words he said. So the charge nurse goes over and talks to him, and it's just basically like, I'm not dealing with this stuff. He ultimately did put on the mask when he went and interacted with the person. He was called to the hospital to assist other police officers for an unruly patient in the emergency department. He ultimately put on a mask when he had the interaction with the patient. They said he then left the hospital. He spent some time in the police cruiser, pulled his police cruiser up to what I'm going to presume is the same doors that I probably actually pick up Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent from. I'm guessing. Because sometimes I pick her up there from the hospital. And that was kind of the end of it. And a nurse wrote about this on social media. And it might have actually just ended there. But then Dave Preston of Safe Seattle stepped in and called her a snitch, belittled her for going forward. Typical Safe Seattle, suck it up, buttercup BS. Dave Preston's one hell of a keyboard warrior. And then Dave Preston, the crack journalist that he thinks he is, was like, and we've seen video, and she's exaggerating on how bad it is. And like 12 hours later, the Seattle Police Department put a thing on the SPD blotter going, look, we've heard about the thing on social media and of all of this stuff. And by the way, we've seen videos, and it's actually worse. Because Dave Preston does such a freaking good job, right? And this situation is actually worse than what we thought. And we have opened up an OPA case on our own, and we were going to move very quickly on this. That's what the OPA said. And then in the late spring, we contacted the OPA, going like, hey, Eric Whitehead, we've got people asking us because we ran the story, and we got people asking us, and you guys said no more than 60 days, that this is going to be real easy and real cut and dry. And it's been like 4.5 months. What's going on? And basically what we got a bunch of cases that are coming up to an end. It's going to be a couple of weeks. It's coming. The report was done on May 23. It didn't get shared until very quietly on August 3rd. Eric Whitehead got a 1-day suspension. That's what all came out of this. But we have the link. 1 minute. Hold, please. Wait a minute. I don't want to do that. Give me a second here. I want to do that. And I guess we're going to do that. And we're going to do that. Give me a second here. Things didn't go the way I wanted it to here for a minute. I'm adjusting the accoutrements. There we go. Oh, you know what? Actually, it looks like I might be able to pull. You know what? Can I just pull the whole story? Let me see if I can do that. Sorry about that, y'all. Was not my intent. Oh, I see what happened here. Give me a second. Stupid multi-monitor. And then after all that, you can't friggin' see it anyway. Of course not. All right, we'll go like... Oh, Bill Gates, I hate you right now. All right, we'll go ahead and blow this up a little bit. Make it... All right, that's probably about as big as we can do. All right. You can read while I'm talking about this. This whole 1-day suspension thing is such bullshit. But Meyerberg is so friggin' ineffective that he's looking for a new job in Arizona as it is. Like, what a surprise. And the office of the Inspector General basically said Meyerberg is in bed with the Seattle Police Department, Seattle Police Officers Guild, and is not doing his job of holding the Seattle Police accountable, which anybody with 2 functioning brain cells would be able to figure that out. So Eric Whitehead, first of all, told investigators that he maintained social distance, that he didn't want to put on the mask because he had gloves on when he showed up, and he was worried that if he put on the mask and had it close to his face, that he could get the COVID germs on his face. There was nothing there about we could have just taken off the friggin' gloves and washed his hand, which was, not even forget wash his hands. He could just take the friggin' gloves off. And he was worried that the mask, the surgical mask, it could be used as a weapon by the suspect to strangle him. And that he was respectful, that he maintained social distance, and that he had an exemption that had been given to him by the department in 2020, where that he did not have to wear a mask, that he had a medical exemption, and that he told the hospital staff that. There's a problem. The hospital had this whole incident all on security cameras, but wait, it gets better. Eric Whitehead's security body camera was running the whole time. And guess what? He didn't maintain social distance. He never told anybody at the hospital that he had an exemption to wearing a mask for his medical condition. And it showed his absolute unprofessional conduct that was going on there. And when he was confronted with the fact that he had lied to investigators, I'm not candy coating it. He friggin' lied to investigators. We talked to the nurses, security. We looked at their security videos, and we looked at your own body camera. And why, when we look at all this stuff, right? The social distancing stuff, I didn't remember it right. And then on the, why didn't you tell them? There was no, okay, guys, you caught me in a lie. It was, well, things were getting contentious at that point. And so I just didn't even want to have the conversation anymore. Wait, there's more. There's always fucking more. It doesn't appear that Eric Whitehead ever actually got an exemption. First of all, the records at the Seattle Police Department for things like medical exemptions for wearing masks are about as good as their overtime records. You can look that one up to see how they track overtime in the Seattle Police Department. And he did reach out to the Human Resources Department requesting an exemption from wearing masks on June 28, 2020. What was going on in June of 2020 in Seattle? There was this whole Black Lives Matter thing, and Seattle police were bringing the big dick energy, right? There was tear gas and OC and pepper spray and blast balls and smoke grenades, right? We're going to get into, you already know where this frickin' story is going. He got an email from a lieutenant in the HR department that said basically, why, yes, we have a process to make this happen. And yes, we can grant exemptions. But the letter didn't say, and you have an exemption. And then when they confronted HR and the Seattle Police Department, of course, they were like, yeah, I guess we kind of screwed up. But now, of course, Meyerberg always looks for, ooh, now I can get Eric Whitehead out of this. He's like, well, he didn't understand. So he's reading disabled? Am I missing something here? But wait, there's more. Because then they were like, can you prove you haven't? And so yes. And he presented 2 different letters from 2 different doctors. One of them from a doctor who, a dermatologist who gave him a specific exemption from wearing masks because of his dermatological condition, and that claiming that Eric Whitehead had tried a variety of different masks and it aggravated dermatological condition on his face, and that's why he couldn't and shouldn't wear a mask. The other thing was apparently Eric Whitehead isn't clean shaven either, and the other part of the medical exemption that he got is that a mask, remember, we're talking the paper surgical mask, made it hard to breathe and caused emotional and psychological distress, and that he had tried to wear different masks, but it was hurting his performance, and he couldn't do his job, and it was hard to breathe. Do you know where the story's going? Let's go back to June 28, 2020, when Eric Whitehead asked for his exemption on the I can't breathe, paper surgical mask. So the question has to come. Did Eric Whitehead do any CRG or riot police, right, or enforcement actions on the Black Lives Matters protest after he sought this exemption on June 28th? Was he exposed to OC, pepper spray, blast balls, smoke grenades? And look, let's call it out for what it is, right? Other side used fireworks, right? Other side used some pepper spray. So was he exposed to all of this stuff? Why, yes, he was. And he wore a full respirator while he was exposed to all of this, and the helmet and the body armor, and was walking. And if anybody was at any of those protests, running at times in the full respirator. I've run in a full respirator. It's miserable. It's friggin' miserable. There's a couple of times where I was sustained running in a full face respirator, where I truly did feel like I was suffocating. But then I was able to bring myself back and go, it's up here. It's not real. It's up here. And then I was able to bring my breathing down. It was psychological. It was. Certainly anybody that followed me knows that I sustained ran at times over a mile with pole cam, body up 55 pounds of gear when it was all added up, wearing an N95 mask with a cloth mask over it and a very snug-fitting N95 mask. So first of all, and by the way, I was getting the breakout action around the face. I kind of tend to get ingrown hairs there, and I have the issues. I'm like, so I want to really understand this. You couldn't wear paper. You couldn't wear a friggin' paper surgical mask, but you could wear a full face respirator in police action with pepper spray, OC canisters, blast balls, pepper balls, smoke bombs, fireworks, stink bombs, bear mace, and that was fine. And yeah, you basically, you did this to the OPA, didn't you, Eric? You did that. You got away with it. Got away with it. That's America. We love people who get away with it. And you got away with it. Eric Whitehead, I'm willing to bet, has applied for a vaccine exemption. I'm probably going to guess over religious grounds. Of course, we have probably no way of ever finding this out. And I have a feeling he'll still be with the department and get his exemption. That's my guess. In other news, the biggest killer of police officers on duty for the last 2 years has been COVID. 716 true believers and counting. One other little interesting fact, as a vocation, police officers are one of the lowest vaccinated group in the country. And yet somehow I'm not surprised by that. Not all officers. I get it. But it certainly is a career that attracts a lot of people who had their lunch money stolen as kids. And they're like, I don't ever have my lunch money stolen again. And it attracts people that like to tell people what to do, but don't like to be told what to do. And I'm going to close with this. The Seattle Police Department right now is looking at like about 73% who have turned in their vaccination material, right? Their proof of vaccination, 27% haven't, between people that have requested exemptions and people that have not turned in their information. It's 404 officers total. It's well over 30% of the force. There's 1,043 commissioned officers in the Seattle Police Department today. Couple of things that we've seen. Number one, we've seen the vaccination rates go up and up and up and up. If we use San Francisco as a benchmark, the San Francisco Police Department is well over 90% vaccinated, and they're not to their deadline yet. Their deadline is actually further out than the one SPD is facing. That's liberal San Francisco. All right, fine. Let's talk about the Washington State Patrol then. Washington State Patrol commissioned officers are they're 91.5%. The entire department is 93% vaccinated, and they are still processing the paperwork. The Washington State Patrol is going to probably come in at about 97%. That's my guess. I would put money on that. Someone wants to bet me, I'll bet it. Not commissioned officers, the entire department. They'll come in 97%. I'll put a plus or minus error on that of 1%. So 96 to 98. But if I had to pick the square, like the football squares, my square would be on the 9. Put my initials on the 97. That's where they're going to come at. Seattle Police Department doesn't have a vaccination problem. They have a very well documented leadership problem. It starts with Mike Solon. It ends with Mike Solon. And it ends with a documented history of decades of abuse from this department. That's not true. Yeah, they've been operating under a consent decree for over a decade. They were actually going to get off of it, but they had to bring the big dick energy to the Black Lives Matter protests. Get bent. I serious. And you see, this is the other thing, and I put this up on Twitter, right? The right-wing aligned media in Seattle area, of course, is scaring the shit out of people. It's going to be anarchy in the streets. It's going to be like RoboCop when all the police officers went on strike, and we don't have RoboCop. But none of them are talking about how the Washington State Patrol is 93% vaxxed, and that 91.5% of commissioned officers are vaxxed. And they are still processing the officers that have submitted their proof. So we know the number's going to get better. We don't want to talk about that because that doesn't fit the narrative. These are the same people that were announcing. Remember the gaslighting announcements when we were covering this last year? We were covering the protests. This is the Seattle Police Department. We honor and respect your First Amendment rights, and we support peaceful protest. You remember these gaslighting announcements? You remember these? Right? Just comply. You're walking on the wrong side of the road. This is illegal and dangerous. We would like to apologize for everybody that lives in this neighborhood. The people that are walking on the wrong side of the road aren't even chanting right now, and we're using an LRAD system to make this 120 decibel announcement that you could hear for blocks. But if it weren't for these people walking quietly on the wrong side of the road, we wouldn't have to make this announcement, and hence it is them who is annoying you. This is your friendly neighborhood Seattle Police Department, where we respect the first rights amendments of people. Just don't walk on the wrong side of the road. Right? Just comply. Just comply. I'm not going to comply. And this is not hypocrisy in my position. Yeah, it is. It's total hypocrisy. Get bent. It's friggin'. It wasn't passive aggressive. It was gaslighting. It's worse than passive aggressive. Right. Again, this is a leadership problem. That's what it is. Because the one last thing here I want to close out on, and I've said this a few times, there is no anti-vax movement. I got some numbers here. Let's go over some of these numbers. Novant Health, 36,000 employees. 99.95% got vaccinated. Houston Methodist Hospital System, 25,500 employees. 99.94% got vaccinated. Kaiser Permanente, 216,000 employees. 99% vaccinated. They haven't fired people yet. 2,200 are like, nope. And Kaiser Permanente is like, okay, you got a few weeks to really dig in your heels on that nope if you want. Christiana Care, 13.4K employees. They're out of Delaware. 99% vaccinated. Northwell Health, they're in North Carolina. 76,000 employees, 98.2% vaccinated. Cedars-Sinai Hospital, they have not hit the limit, so they're still, they have people waiting. 17,000 employees, 98% vaccinated. The Henry Ford Health System in Michigan, 33,000 employees, 98% vaccinated. Peace Health Hospital System, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, 15,700 employees. They're hiring a interim director of acute care for Ketchikan. 98% got vaccinated. 97.2%. Sorry, 97.2%. Mass General Hospital, 74,000 employees, 95% vaccinated so far. The deadline is 2 weeks away. New York City public schools, over 97% got vaccinated. Over 99% of teachers. The biggest area that they lost people was in the lunchroom. They lost 500 lunchroom employees. Of the 8,000 people say, you can't make me do it. 500 people work in the lunchroom, which is not belittling people who work in the lunchroom. There is no anti-vaccination movement. 8.2% of Washingtonians are like, I will never get vaccinated. That's what it's down to. That number keeps going down. And if you follow some of my recent TikToks, you'll know that I've been kind of snarky when people commit preventable yeets. This is a TikTok thing, by the way. I use preventable yeet in a TikTok, and we almost doubled our followers. People were like, I'm here for preventable yeet. So you heard it here first. So if some big influencer starts using preventable yeet, came from my brain, and we have receipts. But people are like, I'm coming for the preventable yeet. We're literally doubled our followers in less than 48 hours. There isn't. There is no anti-vax movement. It is a very small percentage of people. Why does it seem so big? Because they have a huge presence on social media. Platforms run by Facebook and ByteDance, and because Facebook, remember, isn't just Facebook, it's Facebook and Instagram, and ByteDance is TikTok. And those three platforms do very little to block COVID misinformation. If you follow our Facebook page, you know, I when we type anything out, I type C disease. I don't type COVID because we were getting posts taken down. I took a 3-day vacation very early in all of this. And it's like, fine, then I'm going to play with the algorithm. If you look at a TikTok that we did yesterday, even in the picture of the news story, I covered up the words COVID and killed. We were talking about this mass. I didn't even talk about the mass killing. That's another. We had our first COVID-related mass killing. 3 people in Maryland yesterday. Go on our TikTok channel. You can watch the video and be horrified. I also think, actually, I believe that video might be on our Facebook channel. But anyway, you can go on our TikTok channel and you can go watch it and be. It's Malcontent News. TikTok, really easy to find. Home of the preventable yeet. But very, very quickly, Maryland, first COVID misinformation related mass killing, 3 people. Guy killed his brother, sister-in-law, and a random 80. We said 81. Turns out she's 80. Early reports said 81. She's 83. And a random 83-year-old woman. Because, his brother, you're killing people because you're a pharmacist and you're giving them that jabby jab. Remember, boys and girls, if you see the word jab, you know it's misinformation. So you have 3 major social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, that do very little to block COVID misinformation. That's number 1. You have Russian misinformation that started, and boy, we brought receipts for that claim yesterday, where we linked to multiple stories when we brought up the issue. Whenever you see the word jab, red flag. If you see the word jab, that's Russian misinformation. If you hear somebody who is an anti-vaxxer and is using the word jab, they are consuming Russian misinformation. Why? What did Russia have to gain from this? Russia started a misinformation campaign the early part of this year, specifically against vaccinations. They wanted to build distrust, not in vaccinations overall. That wasn't their plan, but it still worked. As a matter of fact, it's working better than we thought. They wanted to build distrust in the European and North American vaccinations. Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna. There's a couple other names that are escaping me at the moment. Europe, that aren't distributed in the United States, but are smaller distribution in Europe. But those are probably the big 4 ones. They are really loud, Rashi. Yes, they certainly are. Oh my God, stop with the jabs. You guys are killing me. So, yeah, unfortunately, I was in a hospital, but yeah. And we're going to have one in a hospital. I stand by that. We're going to have one in a hospital. It's coming. It's coming. I want to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I just think it's coming. Anyway, let's talk. Russia wanted to build distrust in those because they wanted to sell their vaccine, the Sputnik 5 vaccine, which, by the way, doesn't work for shit. Right? You don't hear a whole lot about Sputnik 5. And there were countries that bought into the bullshit from Russia. Well, yeah, we'll take your vaccine. Cool. We're convinced, right? And they're like, oh my God, it doesn't friggin' work. And there's only like 37% or 40% of people in Russia are vaccinated because they have such deep mistrust of the government in that country, period. But that was the Russian original plan. There's a larger, we have a TikTok that I put up on this. We put it on our Facebook page where, and there's not enough time left. We're way over time as it is. There's not enough time to go into all the details of this, but we're essentially fighting an asymmetrical war right now. And we're fighting an asymmetrical war against Russia, China, and to a lesser extent, Iran. And they're fighting a misinformation war. We're not fighting a kinetic war. No pew-pews. That's not what's going on here. And there's reasons why there's not pew-pews involved. They're using misinformation, and they're winning. They're winning big time. So, of course, then you have to get into, well, wait a minute. Why are people like Janice McGeechan platforming Russian misinformation? People will do these things for one of 3 reasons: power, money, or sex. Sorry, it's that basic. People that look for roles that give them authority are into it for the power, the money, or the sex, or a combination of all 3 if you're someone like Jeff Bezos, who ended up getting richer even after boffing the helicopter pilot. And Mackenzie didn't deserve him this whole time. And so good for you, Mackenzie. And I'm glad that you probably have married a guy who probably treats you a lot better. Certainly probably isn't like
You can't even call Jeff Bezos a closeted supervillain at this point. He's friggin' out of the closet. He's friggin' supervillain. Like, I mean, this guy is Lex friggin' Luthor. It's a whole separate conversation. Well, that's my thing, right? So if you're Janice McGeechan, what are you in it for? Well, you're in it for power. It's power. It gives me power, right? If you are somebody like America's Frontline Doctors, if you are Dr. Simone Gold, you're in it for the money, right? Because we know they're grifting, because they have sold millions of dollars of false hope on their website. So she's in it for the grift. She's in it for the money. The people that believe this, it's a small group of people, because we're seeing this all over the country. United Airlines, over 99% vaccinated. Tyson Foods, over 120,000. Think about this. Tyson Foods, over 120,000 employees. The people that work in these processing plants are generally low. And I'm not saying this to disparage, right? This is this wealth inequality. There's so much why this happens. The people who are working in these process plants are typically immigrants. Some of them are undocumented. Wink, wink. Right, Tyson Food? Wink, wink. Some of them are undocumented, low education, don't trust the government, not necessarily being into Western medicine, and have deep-held beliefs against and distrust that has been earned because of the colonization era and how they were treated for things like vaccines. So you would think that even somewhere, say, like Tyson Food would really struggle to get people to get vaccinated, especially where there's such a worker shortage in this country. They're over 90% vaccinated, and they still have, I believe, like 45 days to go before if you're not vaccinated, you don't have a job now. And they're over 90% vaccinated. There is no anti-vax movement for this very small group of people that is shrinking in numbers. They're shrinking because of attrition, like this guy on the friggin' must find the critical race theory people committee, right? So you have that kind of attrition, but you also have attrition on people who are like, look, I know you told me it's just the flu, it's a hoax, it's no big deal, but you know what? My mother just died. My kid's in the hospital on a ventilator. My work is closed down because so many people are sick, and I'm not drawing a paycheck right now. So screw you, I'm getting vaxxed because I figured out who's lying to me. And so that number's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and they're getting louder. And then the other thing is you have organizations like the Proud Boys that are recruiting, and we see this in the Pacific Northwest big time. They're recruiting from the anti-vax people because they're playing into this fear of your freedoms, right? And so they are radicalizing to violence a subset of these people. And we see this in school board meetings. We see this in Beverly Hills, where parents are stalking elementary school children for wearing masks. And this is okay. How? These are the same people. It's child abuse. I'm sorry, but stalking a child, an elementary school child, and verbally assaulting them and their parents isn't child abuse? Freaking asshats. No, North Korea doesn't have a big misinformation. Their misinformation campaigns are a joke compared to what Russia, Iran, China has picked up. But Russia's the big player here. And it's probably Russia, Iran, China in that order. China's doing other stuff. They're just more into stealing all our secrets for the most part. And what do they want? They just want us destabilized. Because by building all this distrust, what happens is you get people who are going, okay, let's do another recount, and let's do another recount, and let's do another recount, and let's do another recount. And I'm going to eat apple-flavored horse paste while I'm doing the recount. And I'm going to tell the doctor that, why aren't you treating my sudden onset lung cancer? Because this is all a hoax, because I saw this meme on Rumble or Gab. And that's where I did my research on the University of DuckDuckGo. And so That's what it is. And it's unfortunate. And there are certain demographics that gravitate to this. And one of them is law enforcement. And I say law enforcement broadly because correctional officers, when you look at vaccination rates on correctional, like the percentage of inmates in the state of Washington that are vaccinated is higher than the correctional officers that are watching the inmates. The lunatics running the asylum. That's a cold stone fact. You can go look it up. The vaccination rate among inmates in the state of Washington is actually higher than the correctional officers that are watching them. And correctional officers just have a total suck because they're paid crap. They're way under. Correctional officers it's a big ball of suck. And they're kind of the soft white underbelly of the law enforcement community, right? These are people that couldn't get to the full law enforcement thing, or they couldn't get to it, or like, you know, they burned out or crashed out, or they're semi-retired and they still got to make some money, and so that's where they go. There's definitely, again, it's not everybody, but it's a lot of them. Yeah, exactly. I know I've kind of gone on in this really long thing, and part of the reason why this is so long is like you're getting 2 days worth of show in one. The bottom line is this: there isn't. Don't be spooked, and I say spooked in the sense of like literally the military term of you're being spooked. That's a term for psychological operations. It's a term for you're being lied to. You're getting false intel, right? So don't. They're really loud, but there are multiple platforms that are platforming. You have a cable news network funded by AT&T. I should have put that on the ticker. If you have direct, by the way, I have DirecTV now, or they keep renaming it all this other. It used to be AT&T and there was something else, and they renamed it. And I know like DirecTV was just spun off, and doesn't friggin' matter to me because they're still paying the carrier fees to OAN. They're paying the rebroadcast fees. If you have DirecTV, you have DirecTV now, you have AT&T as your cable, and you are subscribed as a cable to the channel part of the cable, not your broadband. Cancel it. Friggin' cancel it. But I need it. If you have broadband in your house, you can sign up for YouTube TV if it's available, and then you can just walk away from AT&T. 90% of all the funds that OAN collects comes from AT&T and DirecTV. 90%. OAN would not have a channel without it. DirecTV created OAN. Oh, and by the way, OAN platforms huge amounts of COVID misinformation, and it's broadcasted into 35 million American households. And then you have people like Tucker Carlson. Right. Huge platform, small voice. Well, why is Tucker Carlson doing it? Well, power, money. He's making a lot of money. Maybe a little something on the side. Maybe you get a little cheesecake, a little, right? I know. I'm sure the women are just like, oh my God, I'm just so freaking grossed out. Come on, you have to admit it. There's Republican women that would throw their panties like at a rock concert if they could. I'm not saying that to disparage women. So, why does OAN do it? Money. Pays the bills. Keeps the light turned on. People will betray their values for money, power, or sex if they don't have a good moral compass. Or if they have this belief that when I go to church and I pray to baby Jesus, all my sins are washed away, and then I can go back to spreading disinformation and killing people because Jesus understands me. and I'm just a sinner. That's all I am. But I made a lot of money doing this, and I'm going to write this check and put it in the plate. When I put that check in the plate, it's okay because that's my bank account for when I go to heaven. And when I put in that plate, I'm going to get 10 times. I'm kind of salty on this topic tonight, if you can't tell. Yeah, it's funny. It's like, ew. I'm seeing all these ews here. So, I mean, this is why. This is why they're loud. You have people like Tucker Carlson and, to a lesser extent, Sean Hannity. You have an entire network, OAN. Certainly Newsmax plays into this. You have Sinclair Broadcasting Group. By the way, this is the other thing I want to close on. This falls into the category of I know things. And if you're not, it looks like I'm seeing, because we're pretty late in the night, and so I've seen kind of the new names have dropped off. They've probably gone to bed, and I need to take care of this late-breaking note that was passed to me where he probably saw the look of horror on my face where I'm like, I had other late-night plans that were work-related, but okay, I just been given a big work ask. So yay. I want to talk about Sinclair Broadcasting Group. I know things. People have told me some things. If you have looked, first of all, it was already in the news that Sinclair, in particular over at Como, there was a little bit of a purge that happened over at Como, including in their meteorology department. There's an individual who's over there, a guy that I worked with indirectly. We've collaborated something with Scott Siskel. He's over now at Fox Q13, which, by the way, is owned by News Corp. And apparently one of the things that I've learned is for any of the Fox letter number stations, so like Fox Q13, like there's Fox Q5, there's right all across, any of those stations, they have a Brandy Cruz clone at all of these stations. It's part of the News Corp strategy. They literally do. They have a Brandy new. Anyway, if you go to, let's go back to the magic screen. We're going to go back to the magic screen. I know things. Do. They heard me talking bad about them. Now they're not going to let the page load. Sorry about the bad news there, Seahawks fans. By the way, I hate these color rush uniforms. I hate them. I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. If I was a Seahawks fan, I'd be humiliated by these. They're playing in pajamas. Here, this is kind of here what I wanted to show. Oh, interesting. Did they took it down? Is it gone? Is it cycled out? All right, that's fine. Oh, here, let's look at this. What do we know about Facebook whistleblower Frances Hogan? Yes, what do we know about her? Oh, look. It says SBGN, Sinclair Broadcasting Group. This is called a must-run story. What a Mama Kate, I hate those jerseys. This is a must-run story. So this is not written by Como. This is written by the Sinclair Broadcasting Group, which is very, very conservative. They're borderline Newsmax, just in a nicer wrapper of hundreds of local TV stations. So if you're ever on Como and you see this, SBG, or if you're on any Sinclair broadcast and you see this, SBG, this is a must run, meaning the editors must run the story. And it is complete partisan bullshit. So let's get into it. Oh, she was born in Iowa. She was hired as a product manager, blah, blah, blah. She talked about this, right? Because basically what she's saying is that Facebook is in bed with the extreme right. She's not talking moderate right, but with the extreme right, and was complicit in aiding the insurrection. And she brought receipts, right? She isn't just making some claim out of her ass. She brought receipts. Oh, but now we have reports have pointed out that Hogan has donated to, so basically this is a hit piece on Hogan, right? And where does that link go? Oh, it goes to the Daily Caller. That's their source. The reports. And there's the Daily Caller's the source. That would be like me linking to the Daily Mail or something, or, I know this one was up today, and I called it out. And the reason I called this out is we put it up on the Twitter channel. It was like, do you know how we know that Frances Hogan is telling the truth? Because Sinclair Broadcasting Group is running a hit piece on her. If we do a search for SBG, oh, wow. We can now kind of maybe start seeing all of these SBG stories, Virginia, the fact check team. Will the IRS be able to see your bank transactions? Supreme Court returns in person to tackle abortion state, right? SGB. I'm telling you, if you read all of these stories, their research, their deep links are going to go to like the Daily Caller and the Post Millennial. Hello, Karen. Hello. So one of the reasons that there was a purge at multiple Sinclair broadcasting stations is they've kind of purged out the voices of dissent, because there were pockets of people who were like, they would try to get around this must run stuff. And this isn't specific to Como. I want to be really clear. Like an editor might go, okay, fine, we're going to run the story. They might put it up on the site for like 90 minutes, and then they push it off, push it down. Had to search a little bit for this Hogan story, which was up for a little bit. And I mean, if you read it, look at Daily Caller. It's a friggin' hit piece. Because they're scared. There you go. Michelle Malkin. All right. Mavis Max and Shell's Michelle Malkin. Right. Yeah. I mean, Michelle Malkin's as big as a piece of trash as Candace Owens. Remember Candace Owens and the whole like, I'm gonna get you, my pretty, and your little COVID testing company in Aspen too. And then she got real quiet. Yeah, because after accusing them of taking federal dollars, it wasn't true, because I will to HHS. Yeah, because her truth facting skills are about as good as Dave Preston as Save Seattle. All right, that's it. As we're like, I've been going way too long. So, see, K variable, right, is calling all this stuff out here. So, like, yeah. I've seen this video, K variable Sinclair. And there was another one. Somebody I think like had on, I think it was on Twitter, where they were just showing the same headline, right, and all the different Sinclair stations with the same must run. This is the bottom line, because for local news, right, what we got? We got the four purveyors. We have Como with Sinclair. We have Q13, home of Brandy Cruz, and owned by News Corp. And then we have, King, and right now, King 5 is the one, actually, I think, that is doing about the best job of the four. Cairo is interesting to me, right? I have a lot of problems with Cairo. For whatever reason, Cairo is pretty darn supportive of the LGBTQIA community, and particularly the trans community. There have been several stories on Cairo in the trans community that they really, it's an interesting little niche that they're, a little silo that they stay in. And that's something that their coverage, I think, everyone knows. I even gave Donald Trump credit from time to time. I'll give the devil credit when the devil deserves credit. And in this little narrow silo, Cairo is actually pretty damn supportive of the LGBTQI community. I think they do a good job there. There's multiple articles where I've been like, damn. Right now, I think of the four, I think King 5 is doing about the best job of the four. I think they're about the closest of the four to neutral we got. Como sure isn't. Q13 sure isn't. And Cairo is probably between Dory Monson and old Cairo. And I get that he's not on TV, but it's still part of Bonneville. And I get that they're problematic. There's one other thing on misinformation which ties to local news. If I go to Daily Caller, I can just go to their website. If I go to Newsmax, I can just go to their website. If I go to Fox News website, I can just go to their website. If I go to the Post Millennial, I can just go to their website. If I go to the Washington Post, I have to pay. If I go to the New York Times, I have to at least register. And if there's other articles, I have to pay. USA Today is now, for a lot of the more interesting content, you have to pay. Reuters, Thomson Reuters, you have to now register. You get maybe like 3 stories a month. Now you got to register if you want to go deeper. AP, it's still open, but the Reuters is real central, right? Centrist. USA Today, real centrist. They're putting up paywalls to their content. So then what are people going to consume? They're going to consume what's free. And if you want to see hate and misinformation from the right, it's all available for free. Yeah, do your research, please. Do your research. But, doing your research isn't some video on Rumble and advice that you got in some deep Facebook group. That's not research. I'll close with this. I know there's people, you can't trust doctors, blah, blah, blah. You can't, okay. If you apply that logic to any other profession, let's tie this logic to a blue collar profession, or there really isn't any more blue collar professions in the United States, a gray collar profession. The reason I say blue collar, people think blue collar and they think, manual, even if you have to know some basic understanding at this point of how to program a device, work with electronics, right? Everything has some degree of automation. There's very little true blue-collar jobs in the United States. Gray-collar job. Let's say you're an auto mechanic, right? And, if I came in, I don't mean Jiffy Lube, right? If I go into a skilled auto mechanics and I'm like, yeah, I saw this thing and I guess I need to get my oil changed. And they're like, okay, yeah, we can do that. And like, yeah, I brought my own oil with me because I was told I should do that, right? And they're like, okay. Here. And then if I handed him multiple bottles of olive oil, they would look at me and like, what is this? And if I looked at him and said, well, I saw this video on Rumble. And the video told me that oil that comes from the oil companies, that's just big oil lying to me, and they want to sell me dangerous, overpriced products. Like, have you ever read the material safety data sheet on oil, like motor oil? That stuff is deadly. It's crazy. It destroys water. It kills people. It's all toxic. So I saw this video on Rumble because I did my research. And olive oil is all natural. And this is extra virgin olive oil. It has a flash point, a smoke point of 425 degrees, which is far more stable than motor oil, which has a much lower smoke point than this. And I want you to change my oil with this olive oil because I did my research. What mechanic is going to pour that olive oil in the crankcase? I think it's a really fair analogy. If I went to a farm And I was like, I did some research on this. I'm an expert. I know a lot about, really, you know a lot about, oh yeah, absolutely. I did my research. And, in the research, what I researched was irrigation water is very heavily processed. It contains chlorine and other, and they put fluoride in that water. And, the fluoride, it pacifies you, and real dangerous stuff. And so what I learned from doing my own research is you shouldn't do any irrigation or sprinkling. You should just use the natural rainwater that falls down, because that irrigation water is very, very dangerous. I did my research. I studied. I mean, would you drink it? You don't drink tap water. Why would you water those plants from the water that comes from the same processing plant? And then I put that plant in my body and it poisons me. So you should just use the rain. I did my research. My farm's in a semi-arid desert. This area wouldn't be able to grow one damn thing without irrigation. You're killing people. You're a killer. How can you do this? The rain. You must be the rain and the natural sunshine. Don't use the poisoned water. The farmer had put a gun in your face and tell you to get off their fucking property. I think these are fair analogies. Do your research. But do your research with people that know what the fuck they're talking about. Some asshole on Rumble doesn't know what they're talking. You're not a doctor and you talk. We have 2 doctors on the boards. When we write hardcore medical information, we go, is this right? Are we right? There's things we haven't gone to press with because it's like, no, you're not right. And let me explain why. You didn't understand this report. I'll explain to you why. Okay. And we don't go to press because we do our research. All right. Wear a mask, get vaxxed, and give a crap. And God willing, I'm going to see you on Monday. On Monday, different format. We're going to be running a series of videos next week with candidates who are running for office in Seattle and in Kirkland. We're going to be running a whole series of videos. Not all of them Monday. We're going to start on Monday, and they'll be running Monday and Thursday. And then next week, we'll run another round on Monday because we got a ton of them. We've got like 7 interviews from local candidates that I have to do the editing on. And so with that, Malcontents, I'm going to say, Malcontent out. Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He's the malcontent
Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what